Have you ever felt like something invisible was watching you? I went somewhere I shouldn't have, and found out why no one ever talks about St. Clair Orphanage. They were never gone. My name is Ethan. I'm an investigative journalist, and my curiosity has already gotten me into some pretty ridiculous situations. One time I broke into a chicken coop thinking it was a secret hideout. The result? I got chased by furious chickens. Hilarious now, but it hurt. I was researching abandoned orphanages for an article when something caught my attention. A dusty old file, almost hidden, that mentioned St. Clair Orphanage. I had never heard of it, which was strange in itself. The moment I opened it, a cold chill ran down my spine, like a warning to just walk away. But when have I ever listened to warnings? The file talked about a forgotten place, one nobody seemed to want to remember. And the more I read, the heavier the silence around me became, almost suffocating. I decided to investigate. Even though something already felt off, what could possibly go wrong, right? I arrived at St. Clair Orphanage on a grey day, the sky so heavy it looked ready to collapse. Once I made the choice to investigate, there was no turning back. The building stood before me, old and overgrown with wild vegetation, like nature itself was trying to swallow it whole. The broken windows stared at me like empty eyes, and the wind cut through the silence with a low, steady sound. As I crossed the entrance, I felt a weight in the air, like something was watching me. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. After all, abandoned places mess with people, don't they? But the silence there felt different, too heavy to be natural. Each step echoed through the dusty hallway, and the feeling of not being alone only grew stronger. I turned quickly, thinking I saw something move out of the corner of my eye, but it was just darkness. I took a deep breath and kept walking, determined to understand what that place was hiding. Little did I know that in that exact moment, something had already noticed I was there. Have you ever felt a chill like that run down your spine? I left the hallway and decided to explore more of St. Clair Orphanage. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of my footsteps on the creaking wooden floor. That's when I found a room that looked like an abandoned office. The walls were moldy, and the air smelled like old paper. On a wobbly desk, I saw piles of aged documents, some so fragile they nearly turned to dust in my hands. I picked up a dusty folder and opened it. Inside, photos of children stared back at me, all with hollow eyes and serious expressions, like they knew something I didn't. But what chilled my blood was something else. In every photo in the background, there was a faint figure. It wasn't just a shadow or a blur from an old camera. It looked like the silhouette of someone standing still, as if watching the children. My chest tightened, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. I tried to tell myself it was just a flaw in the images, but there were too many coincidences. I looked around. The silence now felt suffocating. Was someone watching me too? My instincts told me to run, but I had to know more. What was this place, really? I stayed there, fear growing, but curiosity keeping me locked in. Have you ever felt a chill you just can't explain? I did, right there, in that room. After that disturbing discovery, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover in that forgotten place. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I went deeper into the orphanage. At the end of a hallway, I found a door that stood out from the rest. The wood was dark, almost black, and sealed with a rusty padlock. Something about it felt wrong, like it was meant to keep something in. I hesitated, my heart pounding. Should I really do this? But I had to know. Using a metal rod, I forced the lock. The creaked open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. The air inside was stale, thick with rot. A beam of light from a broken window lit up a dusty table with a leather-bound journal on top. The pages were yellowed, the handwriting childish and shaky. I started to read. They are here. They never leave. I hear them at night in the basement. My blood froze. They? Who were they? The child wrote about footsteps in the dark, shadows moving where no one should be. One passage sent chills through me. The secret is in the basement. I saw it, but I shouldn't have. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the orphanage, making me jump. I turned quickly, but the hallway was empty, just shadows dancing on the walls. My hands trembled as I returned to the journal. The last entry was barely readable. They know I know. They're coming for me. The page was torn, like the child had been interrupted. What happened to them? And what had they seen in the basement that they weren't supposed to? I knew I had to find out. Even with that cold feeling running down my spine. Have you ever felt that? I asked, as if you were right there with me. That kind of chill that tells you to run, but you stay anyway? The basement would be the next step. But as I read the journal, I couldn't shake the feeling that they, whatever they were, now knew I was here, and they didn't like it. As I read the journal, my heart tightened with every crooked word written on those yellowed pages, until a noise made me stop. Footsteps. Slow. Almost dragging, like someone or something was walking down the hallway. The sound echoed through the heavy silence of the orphanage, and my whole body froze. There was no way to pretend it was just the wind or the old building settling. It was too real. My hands trembling, I closed the journal slowly, trying not to make a sound, but even my breathing felt loud in that emptiness. I stood up, and the floor let out a low creak beneath my feet. The footsteps stopped suddenly. Could they, the same, they the journal spoke of, already know I was here? I swallowed hard and walked to the door, peeking into the hallway. The light from the late afternoon filtered through the broken windows, but it barely reached the end, where darkness swallowed everything. And then I saw it. At the end of the hallway stood a tall, dark figure, just like the ones in the photos I'd found before, with that outline that didn't quite look human. It was staring at me, even though I couldn't see its eyes. My heart pounded, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. I couldn't move a muscle. Then suddenly it vanished, as if it had dissolved into thin air. But the cold left behind in the hallway, that chill crawling up my neck, that wasn't my imagination. Something had been there watching me, and now it knew I was messing with things I shouldn't. What was going on in this place? My instincts were screaming for me to run, but the basement, the secret the journal spoke of, was pulling me like a magnet. I had to. No, I just wasn't sure I could handle what came next. My whole body was shaking. I knew I couldn't just stand there waiting for something worse to happen. With my heart in my throat, I decided to go back to the journal. Maybe it had more answers. I grabbed the leather notebook with sweaty hands and started flipping through the yellowed pages, searching for anything that might explain what I had just seen. That's when I found a different entry. The child's shaky handwriting mentioned a doctor who came to the orphanage at night. He would take some of the children to the basement, and according to the journal, they never came back the same. Some never came back at all. My stomach turned. What was that man doing to them? I kept reading, and the truth started unfolding like a nightmare. The doctor, a man with no name and no ethics, performed cruel experiments on the children. He tested strange substances on them, claiming they could cure diseases that didn't even exist. Many never came back, and the ones who did were never the same. Whatever happened down there was shrouded in silence and mystery. No one ever truly knew their fate. No one outside the orphanage ever found out. The authorities at the time must have covered everything up. But the journal went further. The child wrote that even after death, the victims never left the place. "They're still here," one sentence read, underlined forcefully. "Trapped, waiting." My chest tightened. These weren't just ghosts or legends. It felt deeper, like their pain had soaked into the very walls of the orphanage. That's when I realized the place wasn't empty. It held something far worse than hauntings. It held the living memory of a real horror, of children who suffered and never got justice. And now I was there, digging into something that maybe should have stayed buried. But could I just walk away? Leave it all behind? No. I had to see it through. The basement was calling me, and I knew that's where the answers and maybe the danger were waiting. I went down to the basement with a flashlight, but I quickly felt it was a mistake. The darkness felt alive. Suddenly, I heard soft whispers, like children's voices, coming from all directions. I tried to find the source, but there was nothing. Then I saw shadows, quick movements, like they were surrounding me. My chest tightened. Was it just in my head? That's when something touched my hand. Cold fingers, light but real. I looked, and no one was there. The chill crawled up my arm and I broke down. I cried like never before, thinking about what had been done to those kids. They didn't seem angry, they seemed desperate, like they were asking for help. I was shaking, overwhelmed by the feeling that something was following me. I ran up the stairs, but I could still hear the whispers behind me. I left the basement, stumbling on the steps, their voices still echoing in my mind. I ran out of the orphanage, but before I did, I made a promise. "I'll tell your story, I swear." I escaped with my heart pounding, legs shaking, fear consuming me, but something changed in me. Sometimes I feel a coldness on my shoulder, an unexplained icy touch. I lived through this and I swear I don't feel alone anymore. Yesterday I looked in the mirror and saw a shadow behind me, small, still. It wasn't a reflection. They followed me. I know they did. Or worse, maybe I brought them with me. And what if it's not just memory? What if they're here now with us? Tell me, have you ever felt that chill? Is there something I can do to help them? Have you ever experienced something paranormal? Share it with us in the comments, and don't forget to check if you're already subscribed to the channel. We've got many more chilling stories waiting for you. See you next time, if you dare.